Namaste and greetings. I, Ritika Sundar, a researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Ivam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, warmly welcome you all to IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. Today, we have gathered here for a special talk on the topic Career Trajectories of Working Women and Ideas for Creating a Gender-Balanced Workspace by Dr. Farah Naqvi. This talk is a part of the series, The State of Gender Equality, #Gender Gaps, which is organized by IMPRI Gender Impact Study Center. Today, it's my honor to introduce the chair and the speaker. Chair, I would like to introduce the speaker. VIibhuti ma'am, may I introduce the speaker?
Yeah, please go ahead and introduce the speaker and the discussants. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Farah Naqvi is a writer, academician, and behavioral scientist with more than a decade of experience in India and Kuwait. She started her career with the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and worked with institutions like ICFAI Hyderabad, IBA Bangalore, and for Organization Development, Hyderabad, as assistant professor. Currently, she's associated with GCEU, Kuwait, as a management faculty and engaged with multiple institutions as a resource person for rendering training and consulting services. Her master's degree in psychology with a specialization in human resource management. She did her doctoral studies in the area of organization behavior, and the area of her research was emotional labor, moderator, and outcomes. In her career spanning more than 14 years, she has conducted management development programs and worked on consulting projects for a diverse clientele. She has, to her credit, many research articles published in international refereed journals. She has been featured for her literary work, her debut book, The Light in Blackout, in 2019, in leading English newspapers like The Hindu, Business Standard, Deccan Chronicle, The Asian Age, The Hans India, Daily Hunt, Newstrack, News Now, The Indian Observer, The Dispatch, and many other online and print media. Dr. Farah loves to express herself through her writings. She is a featured author, columnist, and contributor in different newspapers and online portals such as The Dispatch, Human Capital, TIO USA, The Hans India, Asian Chronicle, Deccan Chronicle, Asian Age, Standing Conference of Public Enterprises, and World Nations Writers Union. She has been invited as a guest panelist and speaker for many national and international news channels and television shows to speak on themes related to psychology and management. Welcome, ma'am. We're fortunate to have two discussants for today's deliberation. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome, sir. They are Professor Mira K. Desai, Professor and Head, Department of Extension and Communication at SNDT Women's University, Mumbai, and Dr. Gaurang Jani, Retired Associate Professor, Department of Sociology at Gujarat University, Ahmedabad. We look forward to learning from our distinguished speaker and eminent panelists, and we look forward to having an enriching deliberation. With that, I invite Professor VIibhuti Patel for the opening remarks. Welcome, ma'am, and over to you.
Yeah. So, good evening, friends. I would first of all like to thank Dr. Arjun Kumar, Anshula, Ritika, and Dr. Simi Mehta for providing platform for this important discussion on career trajectories of working women, ideas for creating a gender-balanced workspace. Dr. Farah Naqvi, a young scholar of human resource management in the Gulf Center for University Education. I think it's very important to interact with the younger generation. So many things are changing in this knowledge economy, and especially what is the women's bargaining power and how the working women their career trajectories, they are facing so many ups and downs. So I think it's very important to have a global perspective, and also how to implement the perspective into practice at a local level. And that's why we have two very senior educationists who have been in the field of higher education, who have also worked with the government, who are also very popular public intellectuals, and they write also, they are prolific writers, Professor Mira Desai and Gaurang Jani, and I feel honored to share podium with them. We all know that when it comes to career opportunity trajectories in today's 21st century knowledge economy, most of the scholars, they apply the human capital theory, that through promotion of decent standard of employment opportunities and to enhance ability and skill of workers by ensuring sustainable and secure job, you need to invest in human capital, that means human beings, and then education and skill development become very important to reduce gap between the knowledge-based workforce and also the low-skilled worker. When it comes, there is also very important analytical framework provided by the career choice theory, that what kind of decisions you are making, what kind, as an adolescent, that decides what kind of career you will have in future. We feminist and women studies scholars and gender studies, it gives the gender perspective, which is also bringing out the institutional factors such as patriarchal control over education, technology, women and young girls and women being dissuaded from opting for STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we see its reflection even in the later choices that you make. I remember in my school, it was compulsory in the 5th standard for boys to go for carpentry and vocational training, and girls for only tailoring. So I don't see any of my batch, but even those who are getting very good marks, they opted for engineering or any scientific pursuit. No, hardly one or two, they went for medicine. So, and what we see in actual practice in current India is that is a stand-up India, startup India, make in India, everywhere we are seeing that women are hardly benefiting from any of these new flagship programs that the government have. It is in this context that so many scholars and even the women's movement has asked whether can quota solve the problem? Is it an answer for creating gender balance at workplace? And if that is the case, what about do we prepare the supply side? What kind of skill and qualification that our women have? Does family invest in them? Does society invest in them? Does educational institution motivate them? Or the only stereotype is that at the most girls can do BA BCom and get married? The question of work experience, like you know that so many young women who have a very good degree, whether it is from IIT, BTech, MTech, medicine, degrees in engineering, but after marriage and maternity, they take a break. And re-entry after break due to marriage, maternity, or elderly care becomes very difficult. In fact, SP Jain Institute of Management Studies has started course for women in their mid-30s and late 30s, mainly to re-enter into the workforce. But it's the gender norms in our country and the demands of women by the family members and community are such that they find so many hurdles. Third is a job search ability. Like when you are hunting for a job, you need to be part of a network. You need to have a social capital. You need to have your friend circle, and also to be seen and to be remembered. I think it's very important that and you need to have buddies. You need to be, you should be in the circulation. So your social life becomes very important, and that's why we see that most of the boys in a career, they have a boys club and they promote each other. I think women are left out of even that kind of opportunity due to the double role and the demands and the restrictions placed by the both in-laws, the matrimonial home, and also if they are unmarried, the parental home. And the fourth one is that enterprise. If women want a career in enterprise, they want to become a self-employed, or if they want to develop a business, where do they get financial resources? Do fathers invest in their daughters, or do banks consider them bankable? So we see that women in various, and currently the survey of startups also shows that highly competent, hardworking, sincere women, young women with degrees in MBA or in IT or in engineering none of the banks or investors consider them bankable, and they don't even invest in women who want to, who go with the proposal to have a startup, no, to start their own business. So women remain significantly outnumbered at entry level in management at the beginning of the 2020. And currently, if we see, because of the pandemic, we also see that only just 38% of the manager level positions are in the with women, while 62% positions at the upper echelons of power are with men. That is the current situation. Before this year, like what we saw, that women in the workplace research had consistently found that women and men leave their companies at comparable rates. However, due to challenges created by COVID-19 crisis, as many as 2 million women are considered, they are considering leaving the workforce in our country. That means 20 lakh women in the career, they have left the whatever they were pursuing. So if these women feel forced to leave workplace, we'll end up with the far fewer women in the leadership. So in the corporate leadership, in the career leadership, you hardly see any women. All the progress we have seen over past 6 years could be erased, and that is the fear even the World Economic Forum has shown so far as India, South Asia is concerned, and especially India and Pakistan. COVID-19 could push many mothers out of workforce. Decades of research shows that women do significantly more housework and childcare than men, and so much so that women who are employed full-time are often said to be working double shift. Often now women and mothers in particular are taking on even heavier load. 40% of women with MBA degrees, they are not in the workforce because of the duty that they have of either childcare and elderly care. Population pyramid is also becoming top heavy. So you have to look after not only your parents and parent-in-laws, but you also have to look after your grandparents and grandparents-in-laws, because the life expectancy has gone up. So women in career, they have to do 1.5 times more responsibility they have to shoulder at the family front. Now, 1 in 3 mothers have considered leaving the workforce or downshifting in their career. So recent opinion poll has shown that nearly 33% women, they just want to quit job because of the increased responsibility of care work in the midst of a pandemic. So given this enormous challenge mothers are facing at work and at home, 2 things should come as no surprise, that many mothers are considering downshifting their career, leaving the workforce. Mothers are significantly more likely to be thinking about taking back steps, and among mothers who are thinking about downshifting or leaving or majority side childcare as a responsibility. So but corporate world is also thinking that can we afford to lose such women leaders, and what kind of congenial ecosystem and the support system we need to create. So that is very important. And families are also worried what can be the financial consequences, because career women are relatively getting a higher pay packet. So at a senior level, women have a vast and meaningful impact in the company culture. All have noted that researchers have shown that they are more likely than senior level men to embrace employee-friendly policies and programs and champion racial and gender diversity. More than 50% of senior level women, they are consistently in public stand for gender and racial equity at work, compared with 40% of senior level men. So they are more likely to mentor and sponsor other women. 38% of senior level women, currently they are mentor or sponsor for 1 and more women of color. So if we see that there is a more democratization when there are more women in career. So it is in this context, let us examine the pros and cons of what are the career trajectories of working women and ideas for creating a gender balanced workplace. So here we have Dr. Farah Naqvi to enlighten us, and I request her to take over and make her presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, VIibhuti Patel, ma'am. I shall take over from here now. You have already given a very nice introduction to the career trajectories the topic that we had planned to discuss. So I'll first share my screen. Yes. I hope it is visible to all.
It's working. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, so how I have planned my presentation is that I thought first I'll be briefly speaking about how we understand careers. then career trajectories and how career cycle of men and women differ from each other. And to draw upon that, to make my point, I will draw upon my own research work on gender studies that I had done with women in a public sector company in Hyderabad. So that was a qualitative research. It was published by Indian Journal of Gender Studies and SAGE. So I will draw upon that research to discuss about the career trajectories that women managers experience. Then I will move on to the present scenario, how it looks like for women, especially when we talk of labor force participation rates, gender gaps, and in the light of the pandemic, whether women have been more significantly impacted. If yes, then what are the causes and all those aspects. Then I will move on to I will also like to touch upon the social perception aspect, social expectations that are there from a woman that affect her career positively and negatively, and also the self-role perception of a woman. So I will touch upon all these aspects. And lastly, I will like to share some points related to examples of few companies who have successfully brought about gender balance in their companies. And so we'll talk about the EdServe certification and some of those measures. So I'll begin my presentation here. So first of all, career is going by the dictionary definition. It is basically pursuit of a person's progressive achievement, especially for professional or business life. But when we look at career in a more encompassing life way, so we see that it is about economic, political, spiritual endeavors that reflect our unique personality and characteristics. So if we go by this definition, we see that career is a means to pursue growth and better positions that are deserving of one's education, experience, and effort. Now, the question that arises is that do women get a chance to pursue a career or merely hold jobs driven by circumstances? Because so many times there are so many forces impacting a woman's career decisions. And I'll stick to this idea that career is not merely about just having a job and earning an income, but whatever one has invested in terms of his education and experience and skills, whether he or she is getting a chance to prove his merit utilizing his educational qualifications and experience. So this is an aspect I thought of talking about career. Now, when we talk of typical career, so the typical career is often depicted as a steady climb towards commercial success, fame, and power, which is then capped by a period of continuing effort dedicated to service of others. So generally, after a person finishes his education in 20s, and then he joins the company. So it's after investing, he's given more training, mentorship. So he or she experiences a steady climb towards success. And in the later half, the person thinks of investing in service to others, in service to his or her field or area of service or profession. However, when we talk of a woman, many times the reality is exactly the reverse. Now, how it is reversed, like specifically a woman's career cycle, it is so that the first half of a woman's life is spent balancing the professional goals with serving the needs of a variety of others, be it their children, parents, communities. And it's only in the second half that it affords them the possibility of prioritizing their own choices and their own ambitions, what they want to do. Because so that way a woman's career is cycles appear significantly different from that of a man. To make my point, I would like to use this work of this lady whose work was published in Forbes. So she talks about a woman's career cycle, how it is different for women. She says that a woman's career cycle is quite different from the traditional male cycle, traditional corporate career pattern. And it looks like that the 4 phases looks like the 20s, the state of ambition, where where a young girl has a decade of learning, exploring, growth, independence, and she doesn't have any dependents also. So that time she's making all her career plans after investing in her studies and is ready to fly. So that is the stage of 20s, that stage of career. Then comes the 30s, which she has termed as culture shock. Why she has used the term culture shock? Probably because this is where the potential and parenting crash into each other. And this is the time when many women find themselves stretched between creating the foundations of a family and adapting to career cycles that were designed and by decades ago by men for men. So if the benchmark of a high performer in the company continues to be the uninterrupted 24/7 linear male career, so many companies lose out on women who because they are trying to balance out on their work and family pursuits. And it is really heartbreaking because it is only in the 30s that after a woman has her learning experience and after her training, she has started to take up in the career, and that's come the time when she also finds it difficult to accommodate both or balance both the aspects in her life. So many women either end up quitting or either disengaging to that level at the workplace. Now, this is often perceived on the contrary, this is often perceived by outsiders and others like, oh, she was not so serious about her career. But the situation is totally different many a times. So this is the second phase she talks about. Then comes the phase of 40s, where many women, where their children have grown beyond their toddlerhood teens, and women do get a chance to refocus on their career priorities and build work on their foundations. But here comes the challenge where that if the woman had taken a break from the career and if she likes to return back, she sees that she has already fallen down from the potential list. Now, she doesn't stand there where she was because of this career break that has happened. Now comes the 50 stage, which she talk about is the self-actualization stage, where most of the empty nesters, what they see is that they are pretty here, that this is the phase in a man's life where men have invested a lot in their career and they are thinking about relaxing in retirement, and women are kind of free from their familial responsibilities too, and they are lesser engaged over there. So they start thinking about, what we can do for ourselves now. And that's one of the reasons that we are seeing many women leaders, most of the women leaders in different countries are ladies beyond the age of 50. So this is the self-actualization phase of a woman's career that she talks about. Now, I really like this model because it reflected a woman's career trajectories very well. So this is from the research work of a person called Mr. Wang, and he has talked about career interruptions in a woman's career cycle. So he says that a woman's career cycle is relatively complex, and it is not simply an independent decision. Rather, it is outcome of a collaborations with multiple parties like family members, employers, policymakers. And as you see here in the diagram, he has termed this like, industrial culture norms, societal culture norms, the national family policies. All these factors tend to exercise a major influence on the career of a woman, unlike men, to that extent. Now, this was the theoretical part of a model trying to explain how a woman's career is different from that of a man. To look into the practical side of it, I thought maybe if I'll share my research work. This research work was inspired from a week-long training program with women managers in Hyderabad. Post that, we earned the project. So this was with a leading public sector in Hyderabad. And the objective of the research was to investigate the changing role and status of women managers in the new economic environment. And some of the things that we had touched upon were aspirations, why there were so few women in leadership positions, what are the challenges they face at work and at home, what are the competencies they feel are most critical for effective performance. So all these aspects were discussed. So I'll go into that in a slight detail. It's not possible to cover the entire paper, but I have picked some of the key themes from the paper. So just to mention, the methodology was that around 50 women managers were selected, and we adopted the long interview method inspired from McCracken's work that says that in-depth interviews allow the researcher to go beyond studying individual perception and identifying shared mental categories among participants. The major idea behind this is that this gives us the benefit to allow the respondents to tell their story in their own terms. So we adopted the long interview method for this. And in this, the 5 very simple questions were asked from the respondents. These are like, give a brief introduction about yourself and your background. What are the challenges and issues faced by you as a woman at home and at workplace? What are your aspirations? What do you think are the key competencies required for effective role performance? Why do you think there are such few women at the top level positions? So these were the 5 key questions that were asked to them. This is a little info about the respondent profile. So we see that the majority of them had around 12 years of experience, between 0 to 10 years of experience, and their qualification were around 68% for having a BTech degree, 30% for postgraduate, and 2% for having high qualifications like ICWA or CA. And 98% of these managers were having kids. So all of them nearly had kids. And 60% lived in a joint family and 40% lived in a nuclear family setting. Now, what were some of the key themes identified? I will have picked only those themes that relate to how or that seem to have an influence on the education, career, and job of a woman. So I will be touching around those themes from this paper. So the first thing that came out was that I have put the case transcripts on the right side to allow the chance to bring in the respondent voice in this presentation. So here this lady says that her father was working at a very low level position, but he always encouraged things like education and music and other things. So she said if she was having a good career at this stage, it was primarily because of her father's interest and motivation, because of which she had taken up this career. And even research suggests that in all those cases where parents occupy a unique and critical place when it comes to transitioning or networks of young people, and when parents engage in career planning with their children, the adolescents and the young, they show relatively greater career certainty, less indecision, more career salience, and it helps in shaping the career of the child very positively. So this was one of the key themes, the role of parents, that came out. Another thing came out with respect to education was that where parents were having a higher qualification, it had a very positive impact on the child, because the children were also then having higher educational aspirations for themselves. And the findings of the paper correlated with that, where 11 of the women managers specifically pointed out their parents' expectations from them. So many times, men and women, or we can say that a girl and a boy in a family gets equal education. But when it comes to having expectations with respect to career, it is more so well communicated to a male child than to a female child. Many times the education of a female child is still seen as an exigency approach. Okay, you study well, then she will get a good match. And in case if there is some problem with the husband's career, she can take up any job. So this brings a steep in inequality. But in this cases, in this particular theme I'm sharing, most of the respondents shared that their parents' expectations that while they were studying had a significant impact in their pursuit of education in their specific field. So this is one theme. Now comes the trade-off between marriage and career. Again, this was one of the major things that was that came on the table again and again, where majority of these women expressed the regret for not being able to take up their career as they had planned, and that had an impact on their present situation and growth. For example, they said that when it comes to education and career, it does not occur many a time simultaneously for girls, and a decision about one directly ends up affecting the other. However, in case of men, marriage brings in an element of stability. In case of women, it brings about, okay, how she will now balance her career and her family and her children. So things are different when it comes to men and women. Even I would like to mention a research. This was a collaborative study that was done by 4 study partners: International Center for Research on Women, Washington, DC, the Foundation for Research in Health Systems, Gujarat, and Institute for Health Management, Maharashtra, and International Center for Disease Research, Bangladesh. They had also engaged into qualitative methods for collecting data, where they did 61 in-depth interviews with girls who were ranging between the age of 14 to 20, and the findings suggested a strong trade-off between marriage and education. So this is one aspect I thought we can talk about. If we go back to the previous slide also, where this case transcript I had shared, this woman who had praised that she owed her career success to her father also mentioned that the only negative aspect at my family was that they gave first priority to my marriage against career. If I had been able to pursue my studies further, I would have joined at the next higher level and got early promotions also. So this is one thing I wanted to bring in from the research work. Next is with respect to the compromises that both the genders make with respect to career. It seems that in this research, the study revealed that women are the ones who are unlikely to relocate for their own careers, but they are likely to disrupt their careers for their husbands to relocate. Now, what does this say about the state of women? This is not happening by law. It is simply that both men and women are putting men first, and this is the way society accept and expect from them. So husbands usually choose where to live, where to pursue education, where to pursue career, and they are not the first ones to disrupt or interrupt their career. So they end up putting the burden on the wives. And if you see the case transcript on the right side, this woman who was having a MS, MBA, and BTech with 19 years of experience working as a senior manager in a naval project, she said that she was earlier working at Bangalore and had got a very fabulous chance of pursuing her higher studies and gaining experience abroad, but she chose to not take it up because she had 2 children in 7th standard. So she chose to be with her husband and take care of the children. So women are the ones who compromise first with respect to their careers. Next is coming to the questions related to aspirations. Now here, though all of the women were career women, when this question was asked to them, okay, what are your career aspirations? 70% of the respondents shared that to be a good mother and a role model. Now, there's no harm in that. Eventually, all of us, the purpose of our life is one aspect with respect to career is to find meaning in our work and also have life satisfaction in terms of our family roles, doing our roles to the best of our abilities. So there's no harm in that. But the problem thing that I could sense as a researcher while working on this project was that there was something in the non-verbal of this woman that bothered me. So what was that? For example, I have put 2 case transcript verbatim here. First lady, like she says, I see myself as a DGM after 5 to 6 years. When asked, why don't you aspire to reach up to the GM level? She takes a deep breath, gives a shy look and starts laughing as if she had cracked the joke or something in life. Another case transcript here, if you see on the right side, here is of the woman. She said, she was the only woman to, in fact, say that I want to get all my promotions on time and go up to the GM level. But she first states this with great confidence, but immediately starts laughing after finishing her sentence. And she was the only one to dream at that level, express it also, but she had an element of shyness in them. So these non-verbals, I have just quoted 2 transcripts, but these were there in the majority of the women managers. So this bothered me as to, okay, what is this that is preventing women from dreaming big apart from the social structure and the responsibilities and work-life balance? So I came across this very interesting research that says that there are internal and external, what we call intra-psychic and real-world barriers that continue to work against women's achievement and prevent them from dreaming big. And research shows that many girls, they experience a loss of voice and alienation from their authentic selves because many of the times it is seen that they have high academic achievement, especially in comparison to boys, but that is in conflict with the prevailing gender socialization attitudes and the expectations that society has from them. So they end up experiencing this loss of voice, which clearly has an impact on the kind of aspirations they set up for themselves in their life, even when they join a good company. So that is one. Another, like you see, this woman said that we can't dream big as first is family. So for her, she said like field visits were very common to her work profile. but it's very difficult for her because she can't go there because there's no one to help at home. So she said one could easily sense that she had the ambition to rise in her career, but was sacrificing on her dreams and for the sake of her family. And also she seemed pretty helpless about it. Now, coming to the challenge, when asked, okay, what are the challenges you faced at home and workplace? Again, that what came out was the interview results revealed that managing their dual role as organizational managers and as housewives, when the major share of unpaid work was on their shoulders, this was one of the challenges they faced. Also, all of these women had an element of guilt, that they were not able to spend quality time with the children. Perhaps this is one of the reasons that when it was asked to them about their aspirations, they said they wanted to be a good role mother, because maybe it was driven by this guilt. And they said that whenever anything wrong happens, suppose the child doesn't behave appropriately or there is any illness or in the family, so they ended up feeling more guilty and held themselves accountable for them. So that is one of the challenges they expressed. Some of the other that came out was that there are certain jobs where men are given preference. So even in parents who fight for gender equality in their own marriages, they sometimes find themselves, splitting their children tasks and along traditional gender lines. So if you see the case transcript on the right side, this lady says that her role constantly requires her to work on timelines and set targets, but she has a very supportive family, and her work includes things like 3-month assignments in submarine. But there are jobs where men are given preference. So she said, for example, on a project she had worked from the scratch, but when it came after all the preparation and work in it she had done from the initial stage, finally the project was handed over to a male counterpart. So still in some places where there are jobs where men are being given preference. So this was one aspect that came out in the research as one of the challenges. Another challenge they mentioned was with respect to informal networks. Now, what are these informal? If going by the sociological definition, it is like the web of relationships that through which people exchange resources and services, through which we serve to mutually benefit from each other. So since when men compared to men, women are the ones who leave early on time because things are waiting at home and they are not so active in their informal networks. So they complain that many times they are the ones who come to know last about a given information. So this again has an impact on the kind of opportunities that come to their door. So this is one aspect challenge that came out. Now, when I asked them, okay, what do you think are the key competencies that make a woman succeed? Now that all of you are managers, so what do you think is the key competencies? And mind it, I had explained it well, that what do we mean by competencies, the value, skill, ability, traits. So the inherent abilities, all these things I said is what we mean by competencies. And now what do you think are the competencies that make a woman successful? All the respondents pointed the number one competency as good family support. So rest of the competencies like talent, good performance, hard work, fighting spirit, confidence, ambition, all this they were mentioned, but all of them said the number one thing that is responsible for a woman's success in life or in her career specifically is having a good family support. So this was an interesting thing I felt I'll share. Now, this was, so we talked about how career and career cycles look like differently for men and women from the theoretical perspective, and also what are the indirect and indirect forces that are affecting their career, drawing from a practical research. Now, let's have a look at the data, like how the present scenario is looking like for the women, especially in the light of the pandemic. So, this particular data shows us like as if it's a good news, and because India ranks 3rd in the world for women working in senior management positions. And as per the 2021 report by the global accounting and consulting firm Grant Thornton, the percentage of women in senior management for India stands at 39% compared to the global average of 31%. Now, another interesting thing was that when the people who had participated in the research were asked about the impact of COVID-19 in the workplace, especially on women, 88% of the respondents in India believe that new working practices will benefit the women career trajectories in the long term compared to 69% globally. So 88% of the women were thinking now that, pandemic has come, there is all virtual work. Many women who could not leave home for work because of being tied up with certain responsibilities at home thought now it will be virtual work, so the career breaks thing could be avoided to some extent. And so perhaps they believe that okay, this is going to benefit, pandemic is going to benefit the women positively, career trajectories positively. Now let's see what happened actually in the data. It actually came out that the pandemic had a very severe impact on women, with their unemployment rate rising to 17%, more than double the rate for women. And several women who lost their jobs didn't even look for jobs. So here, this side, you can say the job losses and also the low wages. So with respect to during the times of pandemic, this data is of 2020 CMI. Now, since we are talking about the gender gap, so I thought, why is it so? How are we faring? So I got this data from the Global Gender Gap Report. And if you see here we have the 2006 score, and here we have the 2021 score. Scores towards 1 indicate greater parity between men and women. And here we see that there is a greater parity between men and women when it comes to educational attainment, because the score is 0.962, and health and survival, where the score is 0.937. But when it comes to political empowerment and economic participation and opportunity, we still see there is no parity between men and women. And this data is specifically with respect to India. And this is perhaps one of the reasons that India has slipped 28 places in the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report of 2021. And it is now one of the worst performers in South Asia. So we rank 140th here in the Global Gender Gap Report among the 156 nations that were covered in the study. So now, coming to how and why are women more negatively impacted by the pandemic? So we see women make up 39% of the global employment, but they account for 54% of overall job losses as of May 2020. Now, analysis shows that globally, female jobs are 19% more at risk than male ones. Now, why is this so? Because women are disproportionately represented in sectors that are more negatively impacted by the pandemic, especially the service sector, like food industry, the healthcare sector, and especially the hotel, hospitality, aviation sector. So that is perhaps one of the reasons why women have been more negatively impacted. But this is only one reason. Another critical reason why women seem to have been more negatively impacted is because that women do an average of 75% of the world's total unpaid care work, including childcare, elderly work, cooking, cleaning, everything. And with COVID-19, this has increased disproportionately. So this has caused many women to drop out of the workforce at a higher rate than explained by the labor force dynamics alone. So now this was the global data. Let's look at how the picture is in India. So again, I took this data from CMIE, and if you see, this is from August 2020, and this is the this data clearly shows the women in the urban areas. It is 21.1% the unemployment rate, 15.3% in rural areas. And compared to the other gender, men 10.9% and women 17.1%, especially after the phase 1 of the economic lockdown in April, unemployment rates in women have been higher compared to women. Now, since we have been talking that, that unpaid work is a major factor that affects a woman's career, because everybody has 24 hours. If you spend 5 hours here, so definitely you cannot spend those 5 hours somewhere else. So considering all that, I thought of looking at the data on unpaid and paid activities with respect to India. And it shows that Indian women on average spend about 5 hours per day on unpaid domestic activities or caregiving activities, maybe child work, elderly work. which is opposed to about only 30 to 40 minutes spent by men. And here, if you see the data, so this is participation in unpaid activities, rural male 47.8%, and the rural female is 85%. And similarly, if you have a look at the urban area, the urban male participation is only 35% compared to the urban female participation in unpaid work to 81.7%. So we see the situation is not so great even in the urban areas. And now let's look at the participation in paid activities. Automatically, if a woman is spending so many hours in unpaid work, so it is showing in the paid activities. The woman participation in paid activities in urban areas only 15.5 and 17.7 in rural areas. And for the men, we see it is 53.4% in our rural areas and 58.1% in the urban areas. So 92% of the women in the age bracket of 15 to 59, they participate in unpaid activities daily compared to only 29% of men. So, and we see that the situation is relatively similar in the rural and the urban areas. Now, let's move on. So why we are discussing about unpaid work. Now, the thing that arises, why we are talking about unpaid work when we are talking about career trajectories. It's very important to talk about it because for every 2 hours increase in unpaid work, the women labor force participation rate drops by 10% as per this data by NSSO. It drops from 60 to 50% for every 2-hour work increase in unpaid work. So that is, we have to take this into account, because accordingly we have to design or work on our social structures, our ways of thinking, and the way we raise our children, where men and women are trained. Like these days, we are training our girls to do everything with respect to taking up open roles which were traditionally occupied by men. But what about training boys to do things which are traditionally being done or assumed to be done by girls? So here is this. Now, this is very interesting slide, I thought. Many times we say, okay, this is the real scenario, but what is the social perception? It's very important to study the social perception of people, and especially the expectations of society from women, because until and unless this thinking and expectations won't change, the career trajectories especially will be affected negatively, and women will be experiencing the culture shock of the 30s. And also, so this particular research, I found it very interesting. This I've taken from ILO website, International Labour Organization. It's in this, around men and women participated from 142 countries, and they were asked, what do you think? Should women work at paid jobs, care for their families, or do both? So this was the question that was asked to. Left side here, what you see is the data from the overall data from the world. Here it says 27% and 29% of women and men think that women should stay at home, do housework, and care for families. And approximately 41% women and 38% men think that no, women can do both. Now let's look at the scenario in India. Strangely, what I found, we see that in India, 30% of the men think that women should stay at home and take care of family, and 41% of the females themselves are thinking that they should stay at home, do the housework, and care for families. This is what women think in India. This is their perception. See, if this is our role perception from ourselves, accordingly we will be taking our career decisions with respect to our career whenever we'll be presented with choices. So what we keep first. So now the question that arises is, why do these 41%, which is a big number for women, they think that women should stay at home and take care of them? What drives women to think like this? Is it because they lack the family support? Is it because the corporate scene is such that it is not still, we have not created gender responsive policies in a manner that allows women to balance both the fronts easily? Because as a woman, and especially when a woman becomes a mother, inherently we are our first kind of priority and interest becomes our child, where we don't want to compromise on that. So perhaps the women in India are lacking in terms of the support system and policy, gender responsive policies at the company level, which makes them think that way. This can be explored further. So I thought of bringing in this slide to bring an element of role perception here. Now, again, very important factors that affect a woman's career, apart from the social aspects and things that we talked about, is her education and skills. Now, as VIibhuti ma'am already mentioned in her introductory speech, India produces the highest number of STEM graduates, science, technology, engineering, maths, across the globe. But their participation in technology research institutes is only 14%. So while females comprise 50% of the class in STEM fields of India, that is reflected only 30% in the workforce. So we have to look into that also. I'll be talking more about it in the later slides. Let me move on to the skill aspect of it, because for any employment or career, two things are most critical: education and skill. So this was the data with respect to education. Now let's have a look at this picture with respect to skill. Now, this clearly shows in 40% of the 7.3 million candidates who were trained under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana between 2016 and 2020, they were women. And but here we see that 30% of the women report not having permission from family as a reason for not accepting the job offers. So they are not accepting the offers in the first place, even after getting trained. Now, another thing here I would like to say, out of the total enrollment in industrial training institutes, more than 13% of enrollment is of women, but the completion rate is only 5%. So most of the women are ending up dropping out, and the reasons that some of the reasons are lack of infrastructure, women-friendly trades, availability of women trainers. These are some of the factors. Now, to conclude my presentation, we have talked about from the practical research field. We have talked about the career trajectories. I talked about what findings from my own research paper, and also from how the situation looks like under the pandemic scenario. Now, the next question that comes to our mind is, what can be done to create a gender balanced workspace? So here, some of the pointers that I could figure out were, number one, with respect to education, we have to see that the gross enrollment ratio of girl child increases, be it at the school level or at the level of training. And for that, we have to make schools safer, affordable for girls in developing countries. Also, since when it comes to fields like STEM fields and all, where there is an inherent bias that certain fields belong to men and certain fields belong to women, especially when it comes to service sector, yeah, so it is said it belongs to women, like nurse, HR roles. All those things are we are trained to think in a way that these women can do these roles better, but there are certain fields similarly where we think that okay, males are better than that. So wherever such biases are working, we need to take actions and in terms of policies to remove such kind of existing biases. Maybe apprenticeships training can be provided to encourage women who have completed their science and technology STEM studies, so that, or opportunities to work in scientific fields targeted more towards women who are graduating from this discipline. Another is what can be done is at the public policy level. We need to increase our quality and quantity of data that we are generating, so as to get design better policies, sector wise, class wise. There are different aspects we need to consider, and timely studies, and accordingly design gender responsive policies. So so that we can work towards eliminating the discriminatory attitudes in different disciplines and at work. Now, another is to work towards creating an inclusive environment at workplace and providing women with equal opportunities. One of the things we can do is having standardized interviews and skill-based assessments, and ensuring that the employees are rewarded on the basis of outcomes achieved, not hours worked. and ensuring that the important business decisions are made not outside the office hours. Because this point I have written, keeping in mind the role of informal networks that I had mentioned as one of the findings of as a challenge faced by women managers. Now, another thing that we need to take into consideration with respect to mentorship. Now, when it comes to mentorship, women who joins a company in her 20s, most of the women get good mentorship and equal opportunities of mentorship. But when it comes to senior roles where women are lesser representative in terms of numbers, probably we need to have programs in place to help women experiencing career transition or advancing in their careers. Mentors can assist them through, or maybe the company can sponsor them from programs to see to it that they are able to achieve their career objectives. So this is one aspect I thought could be helpful. And another point is working on removing the gender pay gap. So with this, sadly, this is still existing. As per this 2020 data, women worldwide earn 81 cents for every US dollar earned by men. And the global pay gap between the sexes, if you see, stood at 50% last year as per the World Economic Forum. Now, now looking at India also, women got 20% less paid than men. So one of the reasons so this was what the data revealed, but we have to also understand why this is happening. So one of the reasons that came out is that women are relatively poor in terms of negotiating their wage and salary decisions. So what employers can do is that they can share the pay brackets to both the men and female candidates and bring about more transparency so that women aren't receiving less than men in equivalent roles. And also they can negotiate better when it comes to their salaries or wages. So this is a very important point to remove the gender pay gap. Yes, and this I thought of including because this is again very most of the career trajectories, or you can say the culture shock happens when a woman gives birth to a child. After that, if she doesn't have the support and she's forced to kind of focus on the personal front. So if there are policies to kind of promote shared parental leave, that can be really, really helpful for the woman. And in fact, companies should promote such kind of environment where it is culturally acceptable for males also to undertake or share the child care responsibilities. And also the companies can offer opportunities for flexible working, part-time working, job sharing, all these aspects, and train all the managers in gender equality to allow women and to progress at the same rate as men. Lot of learning in this direction can be gained from executive interviews. When you see a woman who has worked in your company for more than 5 to 10 years in her 20 to 30s, and then they're suddenly leaving because of her inability to balance on both fronts, exit interviews can provide you data on what you could have done as a company to retain that talent for you. And also not that a woman is not forced to make that compromise or sacrifice. Because if you see the data here, the Center for Economic Studies, there is a steep drop in the earnings of women after the birth of a child compared to that of a man. Now, there is this certification I thought I will include to conclude my presentation, the Global Business Certification Standard for Gender Equality. This is about this we call as EDGE, the economic dividends for gender equality. This is successfully working with 40 companies in 40 countries. You can see this assesses the existing policies within the company, the practices, studies the number of women, how they are represented across different positions and layers in the organization, and studies them on the parameters of equal pay for equivalent work, recruitment and promotion, leadership development, training, mentoring, flexible working arrangements, company culture. So this is with some certification, some kind of assessment procedures in place can help organizations focus better in creating a gender balanced workspace. Now, I thought of sharing this as the last slide. I'll share this with you. This report by Bureau for Employers Activities, in this data from International Labour Office again, you may like to visit, and listeners may like to visit this. This particular report carries the case studies of organizations who have the case study of different companies are presented. Some of the company logos I have pasted here on my PPT. Where they were and what steps they took and to improve their gender balance at workplace and affect a woman's career positively. So some of the measures that were common across all these companies, I thought of putting them together, and that had helped them in creating a gender balanced workforce. They were like, they had rigorous recruitment and promotion procedures that were entirely based on qualification, competencies, merit, and performance, not on hours work, but on the quality of work. So the appraisal system was also designed that way. Next is they sought candidates from both men and women and made sure that at least 40% of the candidates who were shortlisted for interviews were women, and both men and women were there on the selection panel to remove the unconscious bias that often affects, decisions, job-related decisions. Next is they were investing in corporate social responsibility activities related to gender equality, both within the company and outside the company, sending out a very good, positive goodwill and generating interest among positive women employees that, okay, if I apply in this company, maybe I'll be able to achieve a work-life balance and, I'll be able to take care of both the fronts easily. Another point was with respect to their maternity leaves. These companies had very good maternity leaves in place, an average of 16 weeks full of fully paid maternity leaves, and most of them were providing options that when women returned from the leave, they could work for lesser hours while they were receiving full pay. Or maybe they were provided with flexi time, some kind of benefits were given to them with full pay. Next is one measure that had positively impacted the companies in achieving gender balance was a combination of salary incentives, like flexible working arrangements, allowing for better balance between work and family responsibilities, on-site breastfeeding facilities to retain women, and a creche facility. All those aspects were there. Now, with respect to training also, they had graduate training programs, especially targeting women, and formal leadership training program, coaching and mentoring women with potential to take up senior roles in organizations. Now, they had sexual harassment policies in place with zero tolerance company-wide. And one very important thing was that they believed in continuously organizing events that provided women opportunities to network, receive or give mentorship and advisory services, proper exposure that affected their career positively. Work from home, part-time work, and job sharing. And lastly, monitoring. They had proper tools, technical evaluation tools in place to monitor the gender pay gap, which we talked about, so that there will be to create an equitable working space. So that's all from my side. And I hope I finished in my time. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Farah, for, you can now unshare your PPT. And thank you very much for not only profiling the kind of gender gap that we have, but you also narrated the best practices which the companies are following. That is for the corporate sector, but 92% of women are in the informal sector. So we have a far more acute challenges that we have. Now, I would like Professor Mira Desai to share her experiences, because she has worked both with the Samakhya project of government of Gujarat, and also she has been a very important portfolio she has had in SNDT Women's University, the first women's university in South Asia. I would like her to share her experiences and what kind of measures that and affirmative actions that system should take, employers and community and families should take. Over to Professor.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, VIibhuti, and thank you, Farah. It was fascinating, actually. And for that, VIibhuti has set the stage in terms of a macro context of women work and careers. And you have given us a kind of a specific examples from your work in Hyderabad. I work with Women's University, and I have, as VIibhuti said, I have lots of stories to share. I would start with the one that I am right now a partner to. I have a student who met me in a pandemic. She came to meet me in spite of the lockdown. She negotiated an admission in a postgraduate program. She is a working girl, like she does a makeup work, and she was not allowed to study by the family because the pressure was immense on earning at that stage. But she decided that she wants to study, and she kind of did her graduation, and then now she was very keen that she wants to do her master's. So she came to me and she wanted her guidance and all that, and then she took the admission. She joined us in October 2020, and I hear from her fortnight back that she wants to drop because her family is pressurizing her to marry. And I am kind of, to be very honest, I'm negotiating with her that it's just a matter of 1 year, and why don't you complete, and like it's going on right now. So that's kind of one. Second I have had a student a few years back, and she went for internship in a media. I run a media program. So the student went for an internship in a media program. And when she returns from the internship late at night, because it was a news channel, the father would sit in a drawing room, and there was an immense pressure on her that she cannot kind of come late. And then at some point, we actually had to discontinue her internship, and we placed her into some 9 to 5 kind of an internship. And then she completed her internship. She completed her diploma program. And then in the process of time, she became a television producer. And when I met her, I said, how does your father respond now? So she said, no, now he's very happy, showcasing how her serials are on air. And then she eventually acted also in front of the camera. So what I have found fascinating is one, the way families kind of move, because my personal experience as a researcher and also as a kind of a media teacher is that there is a lot of negotiations that happen at multiple levels. And what is very interesting is that women do it more now, but I'm not too sure considering the case that I just cited, because I'm dealing with her and I realize that she's economically independent. She is kind of consciously interested in studying, but she is not ready now to kind of continue because of the marriage. So just to kind of broaden that up, I have a kind of 2-3 points that I feel needs to be looked at. One is the way women's work gets looked at, because I feel that there's this whole femininity around females, unfortunately females, because it kind of gets into anatomical context of women need to do care work, and it has to be unpaid, as you already pointed out. So somewhere if we can change that definition, because apart from doing all sorts of cosmetic, short-term, temporary measures to kind of provide a crash at a workplace, like I myself had a hard negotiation being in a women's university. I could not negotiate a crash in my university, and we are a first women's university in the world country, like India's first women's university. I had a colleague who told me that why don't you kind of create a help at home rather than to kind of negotiate a crash at a workplace. And I'm talking about 17 years back, like I'm not talking about right now. So like probably today, if somebody else comes and negotiates, it might be a different reality, but there is a kind of a challenge. Second is this whole notion of a good woman, bad woman, because there is this whole character that gets associated to work when women are concerned. And that's where I think that career trajectory becomes complicated, because the moment women gets into the domain of mobility, in a public domain, and you also pointed out that the kind of work that women are expected to do. So the whole notion of the way sexuality, fertility, mobility, resources are concerned. So that's a dimension that impacts heavily on the career trajectories of women. Third, I feel is this whole issue of goals, because somewhere the definition of good women need to have a goal of raising good families. Like you also have that data, and which is kind of somewhere I think we need to kind of change the definition of the goal of women's lives, because it is not going there in terms of contributing to the, like when you're raising babies, you're actually contributing to the human resource of the country. But somewhere it is being looked into the glorification of a motherhood rather than looking at it as a contribution to the national income. So that's the kind of a dimension that I feel needs to be kind of looked at. And one more thing that I feel is this, you have raised that about self-perception. So I feel it kind of stems out of this reality of a goal and a perception of women that that has been kind of propagated over centuries. Like we can't say that it is right now. It is changing. But I kind of get into a kind of dilemma when I get this kind of cases in my classroom where I have to negotiate studies against kind of marriage. So that is a question. And just last one point, and then we probably can come back if required, is this whole notion of a mother-daughter relationship, because my experience has told me in my university and also otherwise is that it's the mothers who kind of make it possible for women to work. So I have seen lot of this duos. So if we can do the kind of trajectory studies, and I kind of, when I'm saying this, what is very interesting, I feel, is especially with reference to my own mother, who was not allowed to work. And like she kind of always told me that it's essential to work. So this whole definition of how do we look at work, how do we define character with work, and how do we give new roles and goals to women? Because I feel these are the things that I personally look at. We can always kind of come back and discuss this further. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor
Thank you so
Mira
much.
Desai. When you were speaking, I was seeing so many parallels in my life also. My mother, I think she was more articulate and she had a photographic memory and multi-talented. As compared to her, I'm nothing, but she was not allowed. Okay, and she saw to it that she always provided every support, but I wanted to ask specifically a question about the guilt factor. Because I remember every time I went for field work and when I came back, all my neighbors, "Ghoom ke aa gayi kya?" So trivializing the work and telling my daughter, "Abhi mummy ke sath mat bolna. No, your mother, she just aapko fake ke chali gayi." So what would you like to say about the guilt that women in career are constantly facing, whether it is from Indra Nui to everybody?
It's immense, ma'am. It's immense because as I feel that because that goal given to women's lives is to kind of look after physically to their children is something that's where the problem comes in. Because I feel that like I deal with my daughter is the birthday today, and like it's her 16 years completed and 17th birthday, and the same thing that happened today is that it was expected that I should be around because she has a birthday. And then like then we kind of negotiated that I can come for lunch, but then you will have to kind of work out your other thing for something else. So I think, but what and I have been seeing, like you are aware of Kavita Reges and alike in our university. I see these women all around in my university every day fighting that battle of working mothers' guilt. But the way I have negotiated that is to say that in terms of giving them attention 100% whenever it is there, but not kind of make them understand why we go and why we work, because it's also a question of our own identities, our own goals in life, our individuality as human beings, rather than to kind of label ourselves as kind of women professionals. Yeah. So I think that's something that
having a meaningful relationship with your child, your spouse, or your elders is more important than that just physically remaining present. You can be present 24/7, but you are in your own world, and if there is no connect, then also it is it's very
and
important.
social media is kind of making it all the more
all the more live. Everyone is glued towards this thing. Yes, and you have multiple this thing. So you have a television, you have your smartphone, and all. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you very much for sharing your case studies. Dr. Gaurang Jani, you are extremely popular in your university. I know that all your women students, you have always been a solid rock in boosting their morale, enhancing their confidence, and you are always very, very proud if any woman student of yours makes a good career. What are your experiences and what kind of support system because see, man giving support is a very, very different thing, has a different message to the community and society. So as a enlightened, progressive man, what concretely man can do step by step, and share your case studies and your personal experiences also. Yeah, your stories. You are a very good storyteller. Yes, I accept.
Thank you, VIibhuti Ben, and thank you, Farah Naqvi, for your interesting and thought-provoking presentation. Let me start with, because I am sitting in Ahmedabad, and long back, I think in last century, in the middle of the last century, or even 1930s and 1940s, in Ahmedabad textile mills, initially there were 30% of women textile workers in textile mills. But then when the Japanese machine came, because of that, I think in every machine there were 2 workers, they were unemployed. And at that time, the trade union of Textile Mills Association of Ahmedabad, or basically a male-dominated, a patriarchy was there. And they decided that if husband and wife both were working in that textile mill, wife has to resign. And in that context, I think Renana Jabwala has very interesting study on it, like closing doors. So after a number of decades now, when I am interacting with the textile workers in city of Ahmedabad, I think because of that situation, the second generation of women, of the textile workers, I think it has very negative impact on them. Even 1930s and 40s, when a textile worker, a young woman joined the textile mills, I think her mother's name was written behind that particular. That was the importance of women textile workers in city of Ahmedabad. So that is a historical thing that I would like to say, that how we have, have lots of problem for such type of women, those who are working in the textile mills. It's a larger economic and political issue on that context. But today, when we are talking about the students, I think last 35 years of our experience of teaching in Gujarat and in Ahmedabad, I think last 10 years I have seen in my classroom that girls, they are wearing sari and they have this bindi in their forehead. And suddenly, last 7 to 8 years in my classroom, when in new academic year start, around 7 to 8 girls, they were married. Then I have to ask the question that how many you have already engaged? And another 10 girls are also there in the classroom. So the whole demography of the classroom is changed in city of Ahmedabad, in my university, Gujarat University classroom. Now, what is happening after this particular situation? In the first semester, when a girl entered in the university, she's already engaged. In second semester, she's married. And in the last semester, and I think the next year, I think she is pregnant. In this whole process, hardly she can attend our classes. And I think that type of proportion of married women, girls in universities and colleges is increasing. Now we are talking about it in the 21st century about the late marriages, concept of late marriages. But I'm very surprising that how this is happening, that early marriage took place, particularly they have very negative impact on the girl students. That is number one. Number two, if you look at the Indian caste system, and you have also observed throughout, is a macro level issue also. Throughout India, the sweepers community in India, they are basically from the downtrodden and Dalits, and Dalits among Dalits, and because from the Valmiki community. Now you see, because of this caste system and very close relationship between caste and occupation, from one generation to another generation, the Dalit women, particularly from the Valmiki community, I think 90% of the Indian sweepers, they are from one community. And in that context, from one generation to another generation, the women has to take same profession because of the whole social system. Now, during my 30 years of experiences, I never seen a 30 girls from Valmiki community in university. So we have to also look at this situation of caste system or traditional, how we are looking at not only this particular occupation, but there are other occupations where the caste and traditional occupation, they have very close relationship. But during this pandemic, I have observed very interesting thing from this particular community. I think not a single day a sweeper in my locality, a women sweeper in my flat and my colony, every day she was coming to our colony for her work. And every day she has carrying 2 children also, one around 10-year-old and second is 7-year-old. So I asked her that why you every day you are with your children. Then she is telling that because this pandemic, schools are closed. Now who will take care of them? Because in our family, in the Dalit Valmiki family, everyone is working as a sweeper. So who will take care of them? So I think such type of socially, this is a very relevant situation, and we have to understand this particular community throughout India. Because when we say about the mobility, particularly women's mobility, but this is arrested mobility. And this arrested mobility is not today, but is from generation to generation, this particular mobility is there. The same way we are also talking about the latest NFHS data in state of Gujarat. The data suggests that, you know, the girls, those who are below 25 years of age, among them 25% of girls are married, and among them 5% are mother also. Now this is a situation, because if you plan so many things for supporting women, or the family support, or creating supportive system, but the early marriage and the child marriage, I think that particular issue we have to, and I know that this last, when the 19th century, there was a whole century of social reform, and now today I think the social reform is on backstage because of the religious fundamentalism, because of the market economy. Such type of social reform and social reform movement, and I think after Gandhi, in Gujarat and other parts of India also, such type of social reform which basically supports a women, I think that is slowly and slowly, we are not seeing such type of social reform movement in Gujarat and in India. So in such type of situation or background, it is very difficult that how women can work. The second thing is, I think, the daughter and mother relationship. Daughter and mother relationship is comparatively, compared to a relationship between father and son, the relationship between mother and daughter is extremely good. But when she is at mother's place, as parents' place, as soon as she married, I think the situation is changed. The whole scenario has changed. I think we have to also look at this particular situation. But now there are a number of cases when the mother-in-laws, they are also supporting their daughter-in-law for pursuing careers and education. But my worrying point is that in university and colleges, this early marriage scenario that is I'm observing since last 1 decade, I think we will never discuss about that thing. And the whole issue of crash also in the university, the same thing in different universities of India. When I observe that my student she is pregnant, and there are 3 students already, they have kids of 1 year and 2 years, and we are helpless because there is no such facility in universities. So and the last thing I would like to suggest, that I'm working with sex workers of city of Ahmedabad, and sex workers profession and their career is also very different than the we can say the so-called mainstream career. But when we ask to sex workers, a number of sex workers, they are telling that we want to give education to our daughters. My daughter should not be a sex worker. So there is awareness about it. But when we see in city of Ahmedabad, that the majority of sex workers, they are part of their family, because they are living in their family, because there is no the so-called red light area in city of Ahmedabad. But when they are part of their family, I think they have family pressure. Society looks them from a very, very different perspective. So in that context, the children of sex workers are facing lots of problems. There are sex workers, they were telling that it is very difficult to have a daughter-in-law in my family, because the people were telling that you are a sex worker, then how you will take care of our daughters. So these are also, there are different types of people, different types of categories of women and social background. And we have to look at from this perspective also, like caste, the sex workers issue. And another last thing is when the mothers of physically and mentally challenged children. If mothers are mentally, and mothers are their children are mentally and physically challenged, I think it's a big question, big trouble for such type of mother, that how they can pursue their education or pursue their career, because that support system is not basically we have built up in our family or society at large, or from even policy also, in policy makers also, we have never looked this particular issue very seriously.
for providing a very important macroeconomic view, as well as the how social norms and gender-based division of labor and the special needs of different sections of women. Because when we talk about career, we always think that only women in Fortune 500 company, they are existing. But we have a complete, like a very hierarchical system in the workforce. So at all levels, women are facing problem. And I think we need a very strong support system so now I ask all three of you that you have already very exhaustively told us the kind of way forward that is being suggested in your Farah. So I will come to you again, but I would ask Mira Desai that in a short-term intervention and also in terms of a long-term perspective, nation state like India, what can it do to create a congenial ecosystem for career advancement of women at all levels, among the workforce in the manufacturing sector, to white-collar workers, to women in the managerial position?
Ma'am, my understanding is that we first of all need to give education for work to women, because even if we talk about humanities or even if we talk about social sciences, when women come for education, they don't come with a goal for work. They come with the goal for, like, they are just coming to study. So somewhere when we are, because women's education demands a kind of a shift in the role of women in the society. I personally feel so. I'll just share one example since we talked about stories. I have this girl called Patel. She was my master's student. She passed out during pandemic in 2020, and she is again pursuing another master's. So I said, why are you doing one more master's? So she said, nahi, wo ladka acha milega isliye. So, like, why are you looking at studies for marriage or studies for kind of, because that's something, because women's education doesn't look at work as an option. They look at more as a kind of a marketability, or they're looking at kind of their entire perception of marriage as a kind of a end goal. So personally, I feel that's kind of one. I'm giving more of a micro context, because I somehow feel that the macro becomes possible only when the micros come in place, because that's yeah. So the second thing I personally feel is that the way Workspace looks at women is another area that we need to look at, because a lot of times women who work are not looked at as individuals. They are still looked at, like, we also have career trajectory of working women. So why do we, like, we still always go to, like, women as workers? That the problem is that women are never gender neutral. Like as Gaurang Bhai also said, the whole idea of the way we look at women's work is also kind of a conception that demands
heavily gendered.
Yeah, absolutely gendered. And then the kind of another thing that I see a shift that I'm seeing is this whole idea of appropriating women's work into family businesses. Because that's another thing I have noticed, that that when they are educated, the idea is that ki wo ghar ke business mein, like, she'll help. So this whole idea that I feel is another thing which is kind of helping women's education, but it's not really actually helping careers. So that's another area I feel needs to be looked at. I couldn't agree more. Educational background is the kind of impacting the career trajectories of women, and as we have seen since post 2012, that the working women professionals are also being looked at as a threat to men. So I personally feel there's a lot of work that is required at the level of attitudinal and perception change, rather than in the areas of providing opportunities. Because I feel women today, like, I see a 16-year-old of mine that I deal with, and I realize that they're fairly clear about what they want, what they don't want, how will they negotiate and all that. But the entire ecosystem still need to kind of spearhead that change. And as Gaurang Bhai said, I also see this change that in last 10 years, I feel we are going back to 1960s and 70s. So which is little scary, because we don't want a society to kind of go back. We want a more progressive, more reformed kind of a social change. And I hope that we can do that. And I can always kind of come back.
Yeah. Gaurang Bhai, you are a sociologist. Have you done analysis of matrimonial advertisements? What does emerge when it comes to women's work and career? Gaurang bhai, yeah.
I think matrimonial sites, when there are a number of people who's already studied this particular aspect of advertisement in newspaper and in other spaces also. And basically, when we read such type of advertisement, that they need a girl gun उसमें ज़्यादा गुण होना चाहिए. I think she must be keeping educated, but then has to look after children, and the whole concept of a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, I think that already have fit in our mind, in our psyche. If she is a highly educated, if she is doing a job or whatever, but when she is a part of the family, she must have she has to look after the, and if you write an essay of a day in an average woman of India, or working woman of India, you start from morning to evening. I think what the matrimonial advertisement wants from us, that is exactly when you analyze what is happening in a day of a working woman or a college going girl. I think we can easily say that the burden of family, burden of different social responsibility also is always with women. And I think that context we have to look at. And now, but parallelly, it is also very important that caste organizations become very powerful. So now, when people are in different caste, also they have their own directory, they have their own website, and now back to caste. I think in India, if you observe what is happening in today's India, the back to caste, back to your own religion, I think that is a very interesting thing is happening in India, and that also creates an environment which basically supports the conservative attitude of people. And this caste organization, they are organizing, a marriage mela or marriage fair. And in such type of marriage fair, we observe that if the girls are well educated or they are doing job also, but that particular caste aspiration and caste expectations are so much important and powerful, that she has to work in that particular frame. That is also happening in
even in a women's organization, MD, like doctor, who would be told by a surgeon that I am a surgeon, I have a nursing home, I want an anesthetist as my wife. Or if I am a doctor, I want a nurse as my wife, or I need a pathologist. So everything is pre-decided for her, that what she has to do. And I think if you read the Metripo, every year, whenever I teach course called Doing Gender, for 3 years, I taught that course to foundation course, which is compulsory in TISS, Doing Gender. And first thing we would start, the very first lecture, we will start with the analysis of matrimonial ad. And if you see the English newspapers, they want highly educated, fair complexion, convent educated, English speaking, smart daughter-in-law, but who should be amiable to the family values. And whenever need arises, she should be ready to sacrifice her career. No? So they want educated women. They want, I know of in my building only a dentist, 6 or 7 families who came with a rishta, they all said that, but we will not allow her to do practice. So she scored very well. She has excellent degree, MD in dentistry, and they said they would not allow her. Finally, father was progressive enough not to. They said, then why did she work so hard, for 25 years to become an MD doctor? So I think that way, I think we have, even among the so-called enlightened and progressive families also, these kind of gender norms are existing. Now, Farah, I would like your response. How would you like to respond? Your concluding remarks. Hello.
Farah ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. There are no questions, so it's okay. Yeah, you can give it.
Yeah, I think most of the points have already been well covered by well-renowned faculty members here. So what I think is the role perception basically has to change, how women perceive their role, and also the social expectations have to be such that they are not biased towards one gender, that especially when it comes to sharing of responsibilities at the home front, if we are raising our daughters to be more like sons, we can raise as mothers, we can raise our sons to be more like our daughters, so that when it comes to career, neither of them have to compromise, and perhaps they can work out in a way that both can have satisfaction at their family front also, and also of finding meaning in life. Because if a mother is not happy, then how she will raise good children? And many times happiness, if a girl has invested heavily in her career, in her studies, and then all the chances are thwarted post her marriage, then automatically it will create dissatisfaction and all those things. And that is why we see there are so many women who suffer from things like postnatal depression. And one of the factors affecting postnatal depression is that their chances with respect to returning their career or living the life that they used to lead gets very much changed. But if we have systems and social structures in place where this comes naturally, raising a family together, sharing of responsibilities and everything, then we can be real of great help. So we need to work on, as Gaurang sir was also saying, we have to work at the grassroots level. Maybe the kind of media can play a critical role. The kind of ads with designs, where we don't see the traditional stereotyping typing of roles when it comes to men and women. Ki men hai to he's sitting and reading a newspaper and then coming from work, and woman is the one in all the laundry ads and all the housekeeping ads. So we have, through media, through education, we need to challenge these existing norms and which are affecting the career negatively. So that's what I think.
Yeah. So just I would like to supplement that we also need teachers like Dr. Mira Desai and Dr. Gaurang Jani, who do the hand holding. Very important, because even during my teaching time, I was 15% time went into teaching, actual teaching, classroom teaching, which is mandatory. But 85% of my time went in counseling, boosting the morale, little bit of hand holding. Sometimes just girl would come and give me her smartphone. Ma'am, please speak to my mother. I need to read in the library. But she says that after 4 hours of lecture, why aren't you home? That kind of a thing. So I think supportive environment becomes very, very important for girls. And you see that that kind of supportive environment also boosts their morale. It enhances their self-esteem and confidence to face the reality. So that is very important. In fact, I have seen SNDT teachers counseling parents that please postpone the marriage by 1 month. You can have marriage in May. In April she has exam, and she's a very, very bright student. Don't ruin her future. So that kind of, and persuasion works. So I think we should not, that atomization which neoliberalism has given, that I mind my business and you mind your business, that has to go, and we have to do a lot of hand holding. So with this, I think from among the participants, would anyone like to intervene or enrich the arguments or ask questions? If not, then I can give my concluding remarks. Okay, so I think the choices that society is making, it shapes the workplace for women for decades to come. And I think it can be better or worse. And I think, as Gaurang Bhai and Mira Ben told us, that it is becoming worse because we are going back to the 50s and 60s and all the glorious struggles and glorious collective endeavor of the 70s and 80s is getting eroded. So the challenges facing India as a nation state right now are very serious. Up to 2 million women, 20 lakh women in the career are considered, they have already decided to leave workforce. A broken rung that held millions of women back from being promoted to manager has not been repaired. Black women or women from the Dalit community, women who are from the marginalized sections, they are also facing a lot of biases in the labor market. And there are, and here in this context, there are major 2 parts: whether we recognize the scale of these problems and address them, and also help and do the hand holding. We keep the issues alive, have public debate on this issue, and also the consequences could be very bright if we make such a kind of affirmative action in terms of social security, quota, then giving the bridge courses, the way Ministry of Science and Technology has done, gender responsive budgeting, more fellowships, more scholarships, incentivization of childcare facilities as an institution. Currently in TISS and JNU, you have crashes for both students, staff and teachers, and it makes tremendous impact, especially during monsoon and all, where you are away from your home for a long period. When your children are with you, you feel very, very secure. So to retain women most affected by challenges of COVID-19, companies need to take, and all employers need to take the steps to reduce additional pressure that they are experiencing. And there are important 6 areas. One is making work more sustainable by making it flexible, the norms around the flexibility. Okay, but the companies cannot, as I think Farah told us in this thing, that what is the criteria, what is the evaluation criteria for a person's performance. So I think the whole understanding about the performance review also has to change, and also take steps to minimize gender biases at every level, both in terms of promotion policy, pay, gender parity in pay also has to be ensured, and to mitigate the biases that which are generally prejudice against women, working women, as Mira also told us, that the question of character or question of guilt that women are facing, and also adjusting policies and programs which are very, very supportive in terms of parenting resources or health check or bereavement counseling when women are going through postnatal depression or any other conflict situation. Then counseling facilities are very important. The way men have their own networks and clubs and old boys club, I think we need to create that kind of a supportive environment where there is a feeling of camaraderie, there is a feeling of solidarity, and also strengthen the employee communication. I think that is also very important, because once you communicate, you know what kind of problems you are facing and what kind of mental agonies or any kind of when more brains are put together, then more heads are put together, then you can also find the solution. So I think it's a very enriched and very, very educative and very enlightened discussion. And as I think Mira said, that it was a really very prolific research that you have done, and the outcome of that was an excellent discussion on the subject. So I thank Dr. Farah Naqvi, Dr. Professor Mira Desai, and Dr. Gaurang Jani for making this day meaningful and very enlightening for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, VIibhuti ma'am, for chairing this session. And it was indeed very excellent presentation. What Farah ma'am has been able to put through very new issues, data evidence also there. So thank you. And let me formally propose a vote of thanks. So on behalf of Gender Impact Studies Center at IMPRI, thank you everyone for joining here for this very important talk today on career trajectories of working women and ideas for creating a gender balanced workspace by Dr. Farah Naqvi ma'am. Thank you ma'am for joining us from Kuwait and putting this all together very nicely. Very interesting slides also. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And we are also thankful to our discussants today. And it was such an enriching deliberation. VIibhuti ma'am really put together a very good panel.
Yes.
So Professor Mira Desai ma'am and Dr. Gaurang Jani sir, so much of stories you have. I would request VIibhuti ma'am also to coordinate for such deliberation more, so that many of our young colleagues can also learn. And thank you also to VIibhuti ma'am for chairing this discussion and directing, and to all the participants who joined here on Zoom, Facebook, or watch later at YouTube or here on our podcast. Thank you everyone, and please take care of yourself.
Yeah, I think Professor Mira Desai rightly said it's a fascinating discussion. Very, very fascinating.
Very
Yeah, very. So many dimensions it brought. Yeah, correct.
Yes, have a nice evening.
Same.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.